Our story begins in a moment so intense, you can feel the tension in the screen. Something big is about to go down. Karna, a 13-year-old prodigy, faces off against a creature that's been the terror of legends for centuries, the Earth Dragon. This dragon isn't just your run-of-the-mill fire-breathing lizard, it's colossal. Its roar shakes the mountains, and its very presence bends the earth beneath it. Unstoppable, untouchable, and yet, standing before it unmoved, is Karna, a 13-year-old boy with an almost eerie sense of calm. Karna stands alone in the vast, battle-scarred field, his figure dwarfed by the monstrous size of the dragon. The wind whips through his hair, but his expression remains impassive, almost bored. Around him, the remnants of failed heroes lay scattered, the charred and broken remains of those who had tried and failed to slay the beast. But Karna, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't even seem to register the danger in front of him. His eyes, half-lidded, seem to gloss over the world-renowned dragon like it's no more threatening than a stray cat. The Earth Dragon, sensing this disrespect, lets out a roar so deafening that the ground itself seems to shudder in response. Flames explode from its mouth, licking the sky as it pounces toward Karna, claws gleaming in the pale light. The creature, who has never known defeat, is certain of its victory. After all, how could this insignificant human possibly stand against it? But Karna barely moves. The dragon's claws, inches from tearing the boy apart, suddenly stop midair. For a heartbeat, time seems to freeze. The ferocious beast's momentum halted as though by some invisible force. And then, before the dragon can comprehend what's happening, its claws begin to disintegrate, crumbling into fine dust blown away by the wind. The dragon roars in pain, staggering backward, watching in disbelief as its once mighty limbs dissolve before its very eyes. Karna, still standing with his arms crossed, lets out a small sigh. Fun. Maybe I overdid it, he mutters under his breath, as though pondering a minor inconvenience rather than having just neutralized one of the most powerful creatures in existence. With a flick of his wrist, Karna summons Wind of Decay, a swirling vortex of dark necromantic energy that spirals outward, encircling the dragon in a suffocating shroud. The beast lets out a final, anguished wail as its body is consumed by the swirling force. Its scales crumbling, its bones turning to dust, until nothing remains but a single rolling eyeball. The enormous, unblinking eye comes to a stop at Karna's feet, the last vestige of the legendary creature that once ruled the skies. Karna, ever practical, leans down and picks up the massive eyeball, holding it up to the light with a smirk. This'll fetch a nice reward, he muses aloud, already daydreaming about the gold he'll earn for completing this high-level quest. But just as he's beginning to savor his victory, something strange happens. The eyeball begins to dissolve, eaten away by the same magic that destroyed the dragon. Karna's grin falters as the prized item crumbles into dust, slipping through his fingers like sand. Seriously, he groans, staring in disbelief at his empty hands. His shoulders slump as the reality sets in. He just killed a legendary monster, and yet, no reward, no gold. Well, there goes the money for Grandma and Grandpa, he mutters, thoroughly deflated. You see, Karna's not in this for fame or glory. Sure, he's a prodigy with unmatched power, but his motivations are far more personal. His grandparents, the two people who raised him after his parents passed away, are everything to him. They live in a small, quiet village far from the dangers of the kingdom, and Karna has made it his life's mission to send them money, ensuring their comfort in their old age. Every quest, every battle is for them. But how did a 13-year-old boy come to possess such immense power? Let's rewind. In this world, when children turn 13, they undergo the ceremony of revelation, a sacred rite in which the gods reveal a person's innate abilities and assign them their job for life. Most children are given ordinary roles: farmers, soldiers, blacksmiths. But every now and then, someone is bestowed the gifted seal, marking them as truly exceptional. Karna was one such individual. During his ceremony, the gods branded him with the title of Wise Man, a title of immense prestige. Alongside this, Karna discovered he had a unique affinity for necromancy, a dark and powerful magic that allows him to manipulate the forces of life and death. From that moment, Karna's life changed. His powers grew rapidly, far surpassing those of his peers. Word of his abilities spread like wildfire, and soon enough, his reputation reached the ears of the kingdom's most powerful adventurers, the kingdom's premier party. This elite group was led by the hero, a legendary warrior who had vanquished countless foes and included a holy knight, a divine warrior blessed by the gods, and a battle master whose strength in combat was so fierce she could defeat armies with her bare hands. They approached Karna with an offer: help them defeat the Demon King, the ultimate evil that threatened the world. In exchange, Karna would receive a staggering 200,000 gold coins every single month. For someone like Karna, who had only ever thought of sending money back to his grandparents, the offer was irresistible. His eyes practically sparkled with visions of wealth as he accepted the proposal. His grandparents, of course, were supportive but concerned. "We're old, Karna," his grandmother had said, her voice soft with worry. "You don't need to burden yourself with us. Just find your own happiness." But Karna was resolute. They had cared for him when he had no one else. Now it was his turn to take care of them. With dreams of becoming the greatest wise man in history and of sending enough gold to ensure his grandparents never had to worry again, he joined the hero's party and set off on the adventure of a lifetime. At first, everything seemed to be going well. The party faced one challenge after another, and each time, Karna's necromantic powers proved invaluable. Take, for instance, their battle deep in the dungeons of a forgotten ruin. A hulking demon, its skin as hard as iron, lunged at the battlemaster. She met the beast head-on, her fists flashing as she delivered blow after blow, but the demon wouldn't budge. Karna, wanting to assist, cast a quick spell, manipulating the earth around them into sludge bullets. The bullets tore through the demon's hide, splattering it in a grotesque explosion of gore. The battlemaster, covered in the remains, grimaced, stepping away from the steaming pile of slud. "Whoops," Karna muttered sheepishly, scratching his head. "Maybe I overdid it." Another time, the group found themselves surrounded by a tribe of savage Oars. Outnumbered and facing certain doom, most would have panicked. But Karna, he barely blinked. With a wave of his hand, he summoned an army of skeletal warriors, his undead minions charging into the fray. The Holy Knight, however, wasn't exactly thrilled by this display of dark magic. Her lip curled in disgust as the skeletons tore into the orcs, and though she didn't say anything, Karna noticed the way her hand tightened around her holy relic. Then there was the double-headed demon dog. The hero, always eager to show off his legendary swordsmanship, stepped forward, sword drawn, ready to deliver a flashy finishing blow. But before he could strike, Karna raised a hand and fired off a ghost shot. The attack hit its mark, piercing the demon dog's chest and dropping it in a single hit. The hero blinked, lowering his sword. "That was fast," he said, his voice tight with forced cheerfulness. At first, Karna didn't notice the subtle tension building within the party. He was just doing his job after all. But the more he contributed, the more he began to sense a growing unease. The battlemaster's frustration after each of his overzealous spells, the Holy Knight's discomfort every time his undead minions appeared. Then one evening, as they made camp midway through their journey, the hero pulled Karna aside. His usual confident grin faltered as he scratched the back of his neck. "Karna, we need to talk," he began, avoiding eye contact. "The party, well, we've decided it's time for you to leave." Karna's heart sank. "What? Leave? But why?" His voice wavered with disbelief. He had been pulling his weight, hadn't he? More than that, actually. He had been a key player in every victory. Before the hero could respond, the battlemaster stormed in, her fists clenched. "You're the problem, Karna," she snapped, her voice dripping with frustration. "I can't fight properly with your disgusting magic flying all over the place. I'm a vanguard. I can't punch anything if it's been turned into sludge." Karna blinked in shock, but before he could respond, the Holy Knight stepped forward, her face pale. "It's not personal," she said quietly, though her expression showed clear discomfort. "But your necromancy? It's unsettling. I'm a Holy Knight. Dark magic like yours, it goes against everything I stand for." And then came the final blow. The battlemaster, her arms crossed, spat out the truth. "We only brought you along because we needed your revival magic. But now that the Holy Knight has learned the miracle of revival, we don't need you anymore. You're unnecessary." Karna stood there, stunned. His mind raced, trying to find a way to argue, to defend himself, but the words wouldn't come. The realization that he was being thrown out, not because of a lack of skill, but because they simply didn't like his magic, hit him like a punch to the gut. And to make matters worse, when he asked about his reward, the hero's expression grew even more awkward. Yeah, about that," he muttered. "Since you're still in the probation period, you're not eligible for the full 200,000 gold contract. No payments, I'm afraid." He offered Karna 2 measly gold coins. "Here, it's a token of my gratitude." Karna stared at the coins, his world crumbling. 2 coins. That's all he had to show for everything. 2 coins, and no way to send money back to his grandparents. No reward, no future with the party. And so Karna, the wise man with powers beyond his years, became unemployed, cast out with nothing but his pride and a handful of dust. But it didn't end there. Word spread fast, faster than Karna could have imagined. His reputation as a useless wise man rippled through the adventurer community like wildfire. In the blink of an eye, it was as if he had been blacklisted from every guild, every adventurer's party in the kingdom. No one wanted to work with him. He was avoided like the plague, his once promising future as a gifted necromancer and wise man reduced to whispers and rumors of incompetence. Job offers? None. Allies? All gone. He had been branded a failure, and so Karna had no choice but to go solo, becoming a freelance adventurer, barely scraping by however he could. He took on minor jobs here and there, nothing like the prestigious quests he'd once dreamed of. Small-time hunts, monster exterminations, petty tasks for minimal pay, hardly enough to survive, let alone send money back to his grandparents. The glittering vision of wealth and success he had once chased now seemed like a distant dream, buried under layers of bad luck and worse reputations. That brings us back to the present moment. Karna stood, his brow furrowed in frustration, as he stared down at the decayed eyeball of the Earth Dragon, his latest attempt at securing a quest reward having literally crumbled to dust. He let out a deep sigh, the weight of his circumstances pressing down on him like a suffocating fog. This isn't how things were supposed to go, he muttered under his breath. The breeze rustled through the trees, but Karna barely noticed, lost in his own thoughts. The world had chewed him up and spit him out. What was left of his pride as a wise man felt as fragile as the dust that had once been a dragon's eye. But before he could wallow in his misery for too long, something stirred in his mind, a gentle tug, faint but persistent. His spirits were calling to him. Telepathically, they reported back from their scouting mission, their soft, ethereal voices echoing in his thoughts. Ever cautious, Karna had sent them out earlier to scout the area for anything of value. After his botched hunt, he didn't want to leave empty-handed. To his surprise, the spirits had found something. Focusing his mind, Karna allowed their vision to flood his consciousness, and through their eyes he saw it, a hidden metal gate deep within the forest, partially concealed by overgrown vines and moss. The gate was old, yet meticulously crafted, covered in intricate engravings that pulsed with faint magical energy. A gate? Karna whispered to himself, frowning. Why would a grand medieval structure like this be hidden in such a remote part of the forest? The aura radiating from the gate was unsettling, ancient, and it sent a shiver down his spine. Something about it was off, very off. Without wasting another second, toward the location his spirits had revealed. There was something important behind that gate. He could feel it. As he approached the towering structure, his breath hitched. The gate stood even taller than he'd expected, its metal surface shimmering with a strange, otherworldly glow. The air around it buzzed with energy, thick and oppressive. Meanwhile, in the depths of the castle, Karna sought to infiltrate. A demonic servant knelt before his mistress, Lord Cecilia Sama. Head bowed, he relayed the news. A human intruder had appeared at the gates. Seated on her ornate throne, Cecilia's crimson lips curled into a playful smirk. Her voluptuous frame shifted, and a glimmer of wicked curiosity flickered in her glowing eyes. A human? How delightful. The very thought sent a warm flush across her pale cheeks. Leaning forward slightly, her fingers traced the edge of the armrest, amusement mingling with hunger. What kind of entertainment, she wondered, had wandered so foolishly into her domain? A strange electric sensation rippled through Karna's hand, reacting violently with the magical mark on his palm. He gritted his teeth, taking a step closer. This is no ordinary barrier, he murmured, studying the engravings that snaked across the gate's surface. Whoever had built this fortress clearly hadn't intended for anyone to get inside, and that meant whatever was sealed within was probably something valuable. Rolling up his sleeves, Karna pressed his palm against the cold metal and closed his eyes, channeling his magic. The spell he cast was an aging spell, designed to accelerate the natural decay of the gate's material. As his necromantic power flowed through him, the metal began to creak and groan, rust forming rapidly along its surface. Within seconds, the ancient structure buckled, crumbling into dust beneath the weight of time. Karna grinned, satisfied. Perfect, he said, brushing the rust from his hands. The old spirit hovering nearby gave a low whistle, impressed by the young necromancer's clever use of time manipulation. But before Karna could step through the now open entrance, his instinct screamed danger. He jumped to the side just as a bolt of purple lightning slammed into the ground where he had been standing moments before, the force of the impact leaving a smoking crater in its wake. Narrowing his eyes, Karna glanced up to see a figure emerging from the shadows of the now-revealed fortress. A demonic servant, his skin dark and crackling with energy, another ball of purple lightning sparking between his fingers. The demon eyed Karna with a look of disdain, but also curiosity. "Interesting," the demon mused, his voice deep and laced with amusement. "You dodged that? Impressive reaction speed for a human." He raised his hand, electricity dancing across his fingertips. In this world, demons are marked by the outer gods, a brand etched into their very essence, binding them to an existence within the dark world. In contrast, humans carry the divine seals of the heavenly gods, granting them a natural place among the realms of light. This fundamental difference is more than symbolic. It defines the very nature of their existence. While humans strive under the gaze of heaven's favor, demons are tethered to the shadows, their fate intertwined with the chaotic whims of the outer gods. There is no crossing between these realms, only tension, a fragile balance between light and darkness, sacred and cursed. Karna didn't flinch, meeting the demon's gaze calmly. "What's a demon doing in a place like this?" he asked, his voice steady, though his mind raced. If there was a demon guarding this place, it wasn't just an ordinary dungeon. The demon's lips curled into a cruel grin. "The real question, human, is what are you doing here? You've broken through the barrier protecting one of the 7 great demon lords' domains." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "This is Lady Cecilia's castle, and you've just trespassed." Karna's heart skipped a beat. A demon lord? Here? He hadn't expected that. "I didn't know this place belonged to a demon lord," he admitted, scratching the back of his head awkwardly. "I thought it was just, a regular dungeon." The demon servant, Bagor, couldn't believe his ears. This kid had the nerve to break into Lady Cecilia's castle and act like it was some kind of casual misunderstanding. Whether Karna was truly clueless or not, Bagor was done with pleasantries. His eyes gleamed with malice as he raised both hands, purple lightning crackling between his palms. "Let me show you the price of trespassing in my lady's domain," Bagor snarled, launching a bolt of lightning with a roar. The violent energy tore through the air, illuminating the entire courtyard in a flash of purple light as it shot toward Karna. Bagor sneered, confident that the intruder would be reduced to ashes. But when the dust settled, Bagor's sneer melted into wide-eyed shock. Karna stood there, completely unharmed, not even a singe mark on his clothes. The bolt of lightning had done nothing. "Impossible!" Bagor gasped, his voice trembling with disbelief. His despair's violet thunder was supposed to obliterate anything in its path. No one, least of all a human boy, should have survived it. Then, a deep, rumbling voice cut through the air like thunder. "You've been playing with borrowed power, boy." It wasn't Karna who spoke, it was the old spirit hovering beside him. The spirit, who had been Karna's companion for so long, wasn't just any ordinary spirit at all. He was Noan's, the true god of lightning. A figure of legend who had faded from memory. With a dismissive wave of his hand, Noan's dispelled the lingering remnants of Bagor's attack. "You're imitating a miracle I granted," the god said, his tone laced with disdain. "I won't allow a cheap knockoff to be used against my master." Bagor's face paled. "A god? Here? With this boy?" The demon's mind reeled. How could a human have a god on his side? Who the hell was this kid? Karna, meanwhile, looked up at Noan's with a grin. "You've really been holding out on me, haven't you, old man?" Noan's chuckled. "I didn't want to steal your thunder." The god winked. Bagor, paralyzed with fear, didn't have time to react as Noan's raised his hand, summoning a thunderbolt that crackled with pure divine power. "Step aside, Karna," the god instructed, preparing to unleash his attack. "Watch how it's really done." With a swift motion, Noan's hurled the bolt of lightning straight at Bagor. The demon's eyes widened in terror as the divine energy tore through the air, faster than any spell he had ever seen. There was no time to dodge. The bolt struck him square in the chest, and in an instant, Bagor was consumed by the electrifying force, his body disintegrating into a charred heap on the ground. As the dust settled, Noan's floated back down to Karna's side, his expression calm and unbothered. "Well, that takes care of him," the god said with a satisfied nod. Karna couldn't help but grin despite himself. "You really know how to put on a show, old man." Before Karna could move on, though, a sultry voice drifted across the courtyard, sending a chill down his... Well, that was quite the performance. The voice was smooth, almost playful, but with an edge of danger that made Karna's skin prickle. Turning slowly, Karna's eyes widened as he saw the figure approaching, a tall, voluptuous woman with flowing dark hair and feline-like eyes. She moved with a predatory grace, her presence radiating power so intense that even Noan seemed to acknowledge her with a subtle nod of respect. There was no mistaking it. This was Cecilia Isra Ferris, the lust demon lord herself. Karna's heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to remain composed. The sheer pressure of her presence was almost suffocating. He could barely move, every instinct in his body screaming at him to retreat. Cecilia smiled, clearly amused by his reaction. "Oh, don't look so frightened," she purred, stepping closer. "I'm not here to hurt you, little one." Karna swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. This was a demon lord. One wrong move, and he could be obliterated. Cecilia tilted her head, watching him with cat-like curiosity. "What's your name, little wise man?" "Karna Necromos," he stammered, trying to sound confident but failing miserably. Her eyes sparkled with interest as she circled him, her voice silky. "Karna, you're an intriguing one. I like the way you fought my servant. Very decisive." She paused, her smile widening as she leaned in closer. "How would you like to serve under me?" Karna blinked, his heart racing. "A job offer? From a demon lord?" He stepped back, shaking his head. I can't. People usually find my necromancy creepy. They'd probably kick me out of this job too." For a moment, something flickered in Cecilia's gaze. She saw beyond the nervous boy in front of her. She saw the pain of rejection, the sadness lurking in his words. Stepping closer, she took his hand gently, her tone soft but firm. "Humans are fools," she said, her voice low and filled with conviction. "They have no eye for true talent. Your necromancy is a thing of beauty, Karna. The most wonderful magic in the world. You belong at the top, by my side, where you'll be appreciated for your gifts." Karna hesitated, her words piercing through his defenses. For the first time, someone wasn't disgusted by his magic. For the first time, he felt like he belonged. But serving a demon lord? That would mean turning his back on humanity, on his grandparents, on everything he had worked for. He shook his head, an expression of determination etched on his face. "I can't do that. My family depends on me. I have to earn enough to provide them a better life." Cecilia's lips curved into a knowing smile, and that's when she unleashed her surprise. "How about a signing bonus of 2 million gold and an annual salary of 20 million gold? She delivered this bombshell with the casualness of discussing the weather, as if those staggering figures were nothing more than pocket change. Karna's eyes widened in disbelief, nearly bulging out of his head. 2 million gold? And an annual salary of 20 million. His mind struggled to process the enormity of it all. But the real clincher? "I'll also guarantee your family's safety," Cecilia added, her smile warm and inviting. In that instant, the weight of her offer crashed down on him. It was all too much to grasp. Without a moment's hesitation, he exclaimed, "I accept." The allure of wealth, coupled with the promise of protection. How could he possibly refuse? His entire existence flipped on its head in an instant. Cecilia's smile widened, welcoming Karna into her fold with an infectious enthusiasm. But just before they could step into the imposing castle, she handed him a peculiar mask, shaped like a dragon's head. "For the sake of peace and convenience," she explained. "While I've personally vouched for you, many demons might still be uneasy about having a human in our midst. This will help keep your identity concealed." Karna blinked, the mask heavy in his hands. "Is this because I've done something wrong?" he asked, nerves creeping into his voice. Cecilia laughed, a melodious sound that eased the tension. "No, not at all," she reassured him, her eyes twinkling. "It's merely a precaution. Demons can be unpredictable." Behind them, Bagor, still smoldering and immobilized from their earlier confrontation, managed to croak. "Why, master? Why would you take him in? He's just a human." Instead of snapping at him, Cecilia knelt beside her loyal servant, affectionately patting his head. "Of all demons, you should understand my choice the best," she said softly. "You fought him. You witnessed his strength. Anyone with half an eye can see that Karna will be an invaluable asset to our army." With that, she stood tall and leveled a knowing look at Bagor. "I need you to keep his human identity under wraps." Bagor, still weak but unwaveringly loyal, nodded, understanding the gravity of her request. Karna hesitated, uncertainty gnawing at him. Working under a demon lord wasn't what he envisioned when dreaming of sending money back to his grandparents. Yet, Cecilia's gaze, firm yet compassionate, melted his doubts. The truth was, he had little choice, and he recognized it. Finally, he sighed, accepting the reality that lay ahead. But a question nagged at him, a burning curiosity that had lingered since their deal began. "Do demons hate humans?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically innocent, even to himself. Cecilia raised an eyebrow, intrigued. It was evident that Karna had yet to be tainted by the bitterness that clouded so many others' hearts. He genuinely struggled to understand the relentless conflict between demons and humans. Recognizing his innocence, Cecilia decided to shed light on the matter, though the story she was about to share was steeped in centuries of bloodshed and betrayal. "Long ago," she began, her voice taking on a grave tone. The old gods descended to liberate humanity from the reign of dragons, fearsome beings who enslaved your kind. The people, in their gratitude, revered the gods as their saviors. But as time wore on, greed took root. Humanity seized the gods' powers and, in their arrogance, imprisoned them. Enraged, one of these gods, Bastet, created demons from her hatred for humans. But before she could unleash her full wrath, she too was sealed away with the others. We, the demons, inherited her malice, which is why we harbor such resentment towards humans. Karna stood in stunned silence, absorbing her words. It was the first time he had encountered this perspective, and it left a bitter taste in his mouth. Guilt coiled around his heart as he contemplated his humanity, part of a race that had betrayed the very gods they once adored. Did he bear responsibility for that? He wasn't sure. Noticing his turmoil, Cecilia placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. "Don't let it burden you too much," she said gently. "Humans may have started off greedy, but they've also created remarkable things. Cultures of kindness, love, and growth. You can't judge an entire race by the actions of a few." Her words flowed like a balm, soothing the gnawing doubt within him. For the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. While he was born human, he need not be shackled by the misdeeds of his forebears. With that newfound clarity, Karna's resolve ignited once more. "All right then," he declared, his spirits buoyant. "What's my first task, boss?" His enthusiasm radiated from him, drawing a light chuckle from Cecilia. As they moved forward, Bagor swung open the grand castle gates, demanding the attention of the assembled demons. "Behold our new masked comrade," he bellowed, his voice booming. "A magnificent demon who commands an old god and defeated me in battle." The demons gathered at the entrance exchanged skeptical glances, their wariness palpable. They could smell something amiss about this newcomer, a faint, unmistakable human scent lingering around him. Karna could feel their suspicious gazes piercing into him, but Bagor's high rank ensured they kept their mouths shut. Still, judging by their expressions, they weren't entirely convinced. His human essence was challenging to mask, but for now, he had the Demon Lord's protection, and that was what mattered. Upon entering the inner chambers, Cecilia turned to him with a mischievous smile. "In time, I want you to climb the ranks, to become a general in my army," she announced, as casually as if suggesting he'd take out the trash. Karna blinked in disbelief. A general? He had simply aimed to send money home, and now she expected him to lead an entire demon army? The notion left his mind spinning, but Cecilia quickly clarified, "But for now, you'll work alongside me, learning the ropes." She winked playfully. "I expect great things from you." A mix of excitement and trepidation swirled within him, but that apprehension quickly morphed into dread as they stepped into Cecilia's private chambers. Her room was a catastrophe. Clothes lay scattered like a tornado had torn through, books were strewn across the floor, and random objects cluttered the corners. It resembled a war zone. He gaped, dumbfounded. How did it get this bad?" he blurted out before he could catch himself. Cecilia's cheeks flushed and she crossed her arms defensively. "I try to clean," she muttered, avoiding his gaze. "It just never stays clean for long." Karna raised an eyebrow, grappling with the reality that the mighty Demon Lord of Lust lived in such disarray. Was this really his grand first task? "Well, at least I'm being paid a fortune for this," he muttered under his breath, rolling up his sleeves. Cecilia grinned, sensing his determination. "That's the spirit. I'll leave it to you," she said, stepping out of the room and giving him one last wink. "I'll return by nightfall. Make me proud." Karna glanced at the spirits floating nearby, equally shocked by the magnitude of the mess. "All right, team. Let's get to work," he said, though deep down, he felt utterly lost on where to even begin. To their surprise, the first thing he did was grab one of the scattered books and flip it open. Old Man No-Ends, observing from the corner, frowned. "Kid, we're supposed to be cleaning, not reading." Karna shot him a cheeky grin. "I'm not slacking off. I'm gathering intel." He waved the book triumphantly. "If I want to make her room perfect, I need to understand her better. Knowing what she reads and what she enjoys will help me set it up just right." His logic might not have been conventional, but it was sound. Of course, conducting all that research alone would take forever, so Karna enlisted his spirits for help. Each one snatched a book, flipping through the pages and telepathically relaying the contents back to him through ectoplasm. The process was surprisingly efficient, almost too efficient. Within minutes, Karna had absorbed a vast catalog of demon history, culture, and, most importantly, Cecilia's personal tastes. His spirits watched in awe at how quickly he grasped the information, but Old Man No-Ends shook his head in concern. "Be careful, boy. You're going to burn out if you push yourself too hard." But Karna merely grinned. "I'm fine. We've got this." Energized by his newfound knowledge, he turned his focus back to the task at hand. Armed with insights into what made the Demon Lord tick, he and his spirit set to work. Every item was organized with care, every book returned to its rightful place, and slowly but surely, the chaos of Cecilia's room was brought to heel. Hours passed, and though the undertaking was overwhelming, Karna felt an unexpected sense of fulfillment growing within him. It wasn't glamorous work, but he was making a difference. By the time the sun began to set, the once cluttered room was tidy, organized, and polished, fit for a demon lord. This was his inaugural day under Cecilia's banner, and although it had been a whirlwind of emotions, Karna felt he was beginning to carve out his niche. Yet ahead lay countless challenges, so many questions unanswered. But for now, he had transformed chaos into order, and that was a commendable start. As night descended, Cecilia returned to her chambers, fully expecting to see only a modest improvement at best. However, the moment she swung open the door, her eyes widened in astonishment. What had once been a chaotic disaster now appeared perfectly arranged, almost gleaming under the soft glow of the lanterns. Every corner sparkled, every item was meticulously placed, and the entire room had been tailored to her tastes. Cecilia blinked, her mind reeling from the astonishing transformation before her. "You did all this?" she asked, gazing at Karna and his spectral companions, disbelief etched across her face. Karna stood tall, a modest smile gracing his lips. "Well, it wasn't all me. My spirit companions did the heavy lifting. Without them, I'd still be buried under a mountain of books." He gestured toward the spirits orbiting him, their ectoplasmic forms shimmering with pride. Cecilia turned to them, her demeanor softening. "Thank you," she said, her voice laced with genuine appreciation, a stark contrast to her usual sultry, teasing tone. She faced Karna again, warmth radiating from her smile. "You've truly exceeded my expectations, Karna. I'm so grateful you came into my life." The sincerity in her words caught him off guard, her smile free of any hidden agendas or playful barbs. Karna rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly bashful. "Just happy to help," he said with a grin. Then a thought struck him, and he hesitated before continuing. While I was organizing, I noticed something curious." Cecilia raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I found some human books under your bed," he continued cautiously. "So, I organized them with the other literature on the shelf. I didn't know you were into human authors. Biographies, poetry collections, cookbooks, and romance novels." Cecilia's cheeks flushed crimson as the realization dawned that her secret stash had been discovered. Instinctively, she brought a hand to her face, flustered beyond belief. Romance novels of all things. Her usual confident, commanding demeanor wavered as she scrambled for an excuse. Well, she stammered, words escaping her. Karna blinked, catching her flustered state. "I mean, I'm not judging or anything," he quickly added. "I just didn't expect the Demon Lord of Lust to be into romance novels." Still blushing, Cecilia gently took one of the books from his hand and hugged it to her chest, looking away and biting her lip in embarrassment. "Please, don't tell anyone," she whispered, revealing that this wasn't merely about her reading preferences. Something deeper lurked beneath. After a pause, her voice turned softer, laden with emotion. "The truth is, I dream of creating a world where demons and humans can coexist. I've studied human culture for ages, wanting to understand them, how they think, what they value, how they love." Karna stared at her, taken aback. He hadn't anticipated such a vision from a demon lord, especially one like Cecilia. She continued, her gaze distant, as if wandering through her thoughts. "Humans and demons have always been at odds, but they possess so much that remains a mystery to us. Concepts like love, marriage, and family are nearly non-existent in the demon realm. That's why I read these books. I long to understand love." Karna struggled to find his voice, astonished by her idealism. For a moment, the notorious demon lord of lust faded from his mind, revealing a person striving to navigate a world she scarcely understood. Cecilia felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't dared to be in centuries. Yet, there was no turning back now. She closed the distance between them, her gaze locking onto Karna's. "You've uncovered parts of me I've kept hidden for far too long," she said softly, her tone sultry yet tender. "It's not fair that you know so much about me, while I know so little about you." Karna's heart raced as she moved closer, the warmth of her presence enveloping him. He fought to maintain his composure, but his thoughts scattered, focusing on the obvious distractions right in front of him. Cecilia, keenly aware of his turmoil, allowed a playful smile to dance at the corners of her lips. "So tell me, Karna," she whispered, her hand brushing lightly against his shoulder, sending a shiver down his spine. "How did you end up making a contract with the old gods?" Karna blinked, momentarily disarmed by her proximity. His mind scrambled for a coherent response, but all that emerged was, "Wait, that's what you wanted to know?" Cecilia leaned in closer, her breath warm against his skin as she teased. "What did you think I was going to ask?" Her voice blended amusement and seduction, though a light blush still tinged her cheeks. Karna, his face flushing, stammered, "Nothing. I wasn't thinking about anything else, I swear." His flustered expression betrayed his every thought. Sensing his discomfort, Cecilia stepped back slightly, allowing him some breathing space while keeping her mischievous gaze fixed on him. "So, the old gods?" she inquired, now genuinely intrigued. Karna sighed, gathering his thoughts. "Well, it's kind of a strange story. I jokingly call the old gods my grandparents these days," he said with a small smile. "They used to be my neighbors." Cecilia's eyes widened in surprise. "Neighbors? What do you mean?" Karna rubbed his neck, preparing to share his tale. "It all began after I received my mark at the ceremony of revelation. My real grandparents owned a piece of land surrounded by spirits. The miasma of death made it impossible for them to expand their farm, and they struggled to make ends meet. They didn't want to burden me with their troubles, but I always knew." He paused, his voice softening. "So one night, while they slept, I snuck out. I couldn't bear the thought of them suffering. I figured if I could rid the land of the spirits, they could expand the farm and finally breathe easy." Cecilia listened intently, her gaze unwavering. Karna continued, "I used my necromantic powers to gather and disperse the spirits from the land. But as I did, the ground beneath me gave way. I fell into this massive pit, deep into the earth." He gestured dramatically, trying to convey the enormity of his fall. "I thought I was done for. The descent seemed endless." He chuckled lightly, though the memory wasn't pleasant. "Fortunately, I managed to cushion my landing with some necromantic sludge. When I reached the bottom, I discovered an ancient tomb, and that's where I encountered the old gods. They'd been sealed away, just waiting for someone to find them." Cecilia's eyes sparkled with fascination. "And that someone was you?" Karna nodded, his gaze drifting as he recalled the scene. As he took in his surroundings, he spotted a small pyramid hidden beneath the farmland, its ancient architecture both impressive and foreboding. "What on earth is that doing here?" The thought resonated within him as he scrutinized the structure. It resembled a dungeon, vast and ominous. But what could such an imposing edifice be doing beneath his grandparents' land? He couldn't shake the feeling that this might be the very source of the curse plaguing the farm. The curse that attracted vengeful spirits and rendered the land barren. Determined to investigate, Karna stepped forward, but before he could proceed, a deep voice commanded him to stop. An old man, brandishing a thunderbolt trident, materialized before him, radiating raw power. A dragon, its massive form coiled protectively around the entrance of the pyramid, accompanied him. Karna, despite the fear gnawing at his insides, stood his ground. "Who are you?" he demanded, striving for steadiness in his voice. The old man, his tone thunderous, introduced himself as Noens, an ancient god, asserting that this was their resting ground. "This is the graveyard of the gods, mortal," Noens proclaimed, his voice echoing through the air. "You have no business here. Depart at once." Panic surged through Karna as the gravity of the situation sunk in. He had stumbled upon a sacred site, a grave of the gods that should never be disturbed. Yet despite his fear, he couldn't bring himself to leave. He had come here to lift the curse ravaging the land, to save his grandparents. Returning empty-handed wasn't an option. "No," Karna said, his voice trembling yet resolute. "I can't leave. I need to lift the curse." Noens raised his trident, violet lightning crackling through the air like a storm on the verge of eruption. Hearing a mortal defy him stirred a wave of nostalgia in the old god. It had been ages since a human had dared challenge him. "You wish to defy me, child?" Noens asked, amusement glimmering in his ancient eyes. "Very well, you'll regret it." With a flick of his wrist, the god unleashed his despairing violet lightning, illuminating the cavern in a blinding flash of chaos. Karna barely had time to react, summoning a necromantic sludge shield to absorb the impact. The electric arc collided with his barrier, but it was akin to trying to stop a tsunami with a handful of mud. The lightning sliced through his shield, striking him with excruciating pain, paralyzing his muscles and jolting his entire being. "What is this?" he gasped, struggling to stand. "You can't just..." Noens' laughter echoed through. Karna hit the ground hard. Every part of him begged to quit, but he couldn't. For the sake of his grandparents, giving up wasn't an option. Noens, disappointed, turned away with a scoff. His voice echoed through the air. "Foolish boy," he muttered, convinced no mortal could rise after such a blow. But Karna twitched. Agonizingly, he planted his hands on the ground and forced himself up. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his eyes blazed with determination. He raised a shaky arm and summoned a volley of mud bullets, launching them at Noens' back. The soggy projectiles slapped uselessly against the god's lightning shield, fizzling out on contact. Noens stopped mid-step, turning with a bemused grin. "Mud?" he said with a chuckle. "You really threw mud at me?" He shook his head. "Bold. Stupid, but bold." Karna stood his ground, swaying on his feet, mud-streaked and gasping for breath, but something in his gaze burned too fiercely to ignore. Noens grinned wider, electricity crackling in his hand. "All right then," he rumbled, gripping his trident. "Let's see how long you last." The dungeon erupted as lightning shot from Noens' weapon, splitting the ground and walls with deafening cracks. Karna dodged as best he could, throwing waves of sludge and necromantic magic in return, but each bolt knocked him down. Each time his body screamed to stay down, and each time he forced himself back to his feet. He had no strength left, no magic to rely on, just the memory of those he had vowed to save. It was love, not pride or rage, that kept him moving. The kind of love that made a person rise when everything else told them to stop. For the first time in centuries, Noens hesitated. His grin softened into something almost resembling respect. He lowered his trident, the storm fading from his eyes. "Enough," he said quietly, as if impressed. "You've got good eyes, boy. Fighting for more than yourself? That's rare." His grin returned, sharp and amused. "Though your tactics could use some serious work." Karna leaned forward, panting hard, his body on the verge of collapse. Before he could respond, the shadows shifted, and forgotten spirits drifted closer. Silent, curious, drawn to the mortal who refused to stay down. Noens gave a slow nod, as if making a decision. "I think I'll tag along," he said with a mischievous glint, twirling his trident lazily. "It's been centuries since I had this much fun." Karna stared, stunned, unsure if this was some cruel trick, or a punishment worse than the curse he'd come to break. Noens chuckled, the sound like distant thunder. "What's the matter? You're stuck with me now. Might as well make it interesting." The spirits murmured their approval, swirling around Karna, drawn to the fire that burned in his soul. In that moment, a silent bond was formed, not with words, but with understanding. In time, even the old gods would come to see Karna as family, not by blood, but by bond, though of course none of them would ever admit it. Back in the present, Cecilia was mesmerized by his tale. Her usual sultry confidence faded into something genuine as she absorbed every detail of how Karna had come to wield the power of an ancient deity. She was awed, not just by his story, but by the tenacity that had driven him to survive such a perilous encounter. "So, you made a contract with Noens after all that?" she asked, her voice soft with admiration. "I've read countless ancient texts, and none hinted at the location of such a sacred site. You not only found it, but unsealed it and lived to tell the tale." Karna, slightly bashful from the attention, shrugged. "Yeah, I guess I was lucky." Cecilia stepped closer, her eyes sparkling with renewed purpose. She reached out and gently patted him on the head, her voice warm. "You're more than lucky, Karna. You're special. My instincts were right. You have the potential to become a great general in my army." Her expression turned thoughtful. "But before that can happen, you'll need your own territory to command." With a wave of her hand, Cecilia opened a swirling portal, its violet energy rippling like water. "Come," she said, a grin spreading across her lips. "Let's go inspect your new home." Karna's heart raced as he followed her through the portal. The sight on the other side was nothing short of terrifying. They had arrived in the heart of a menacing dungeon, Oni's Cavern, a cursed place where only the brave or foolish dared to tread. Ahead, scrawny soldiers were fleeing, their screams echoing through the cavern as they ran for their lives. The ground shook beneath them, each step of the dungeon's guardian reverberating like thunder. Colossal orc, the size of a building, stormed toward them, its heavy spiked club swinging with deadly precision. Blood stained the ground, and the orc's eyes gleamed with cruel delight as it hunted the unfortunate souls who had dared enter its domain. But not everyone ran. A blonde knight stood her ground, her armor battered but her spirit unbroken. Her sword gleamed as she charged at the orc, killing intent etched across her face. "I will never forgive you for what you've done to my kingdom," she screamed, her blade cutting through the air. But the orc was faster, its club swinging down with brutal force. The knight barely managed to block the blow, but the impact was too much. Her armor cracked, and blood sprayed from her mouth as half her body was crushed under the weight of the attack. The orc, grinning grotesquely, grabbed her by the hair, lifting her broken form off the ground. He snarled, showing his fangs as if savoring the moment. "Humans are nothing but demon food," he growled, bringing her closer to his mouth, eager to crush her skull. Fear and pain filled the knight's eyes, her mind screaming for her body to move, but she was too weak to resist. In that moment, the grotesque creature grinned wider, ready to devour her. But before he could take a bite, 3 necro bullets streaked through the air, slamming into the orc with explosive force. The impact knocked the hulking creature off its feet, sending it tumbling to the ground. Its meal forgotten, the knight, barely conscious, thought for a fleeting moment that reinforcements from the kingdom had come to save her. She was wrong. Descending from above, riding atop a cluster of flying skulls, was Karna, concealed behind a dragon mask. He had not come to save her. He was here for a very different reason. This was his first real assignment under the banner of the Demon Lord. No longer was he the wandering necromancer fighting for human causes. Now, he stood as an enemy to humanity. Just a few moments earlier, Karna had arrived at the entrance of Oni's cavern, with Cecilia by his side. The Demon Lord had explained the situation. This dungeon lay in the territory of the Greed Demon Lord, near a human kingdom. The ogres within the dungeon had been terrorizing the nearby villages, repeatedly launching vicious attacks on human settlements. If Cecilia's vision of a future where humans and demons coexisted peacefully was to ever come true, they couldn't allow these violent grievances to continue. "This is our first step toward that future," Cecilia had said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "But sometimes to achieve peace, you need to take forceful steps." Now, Karna stood in the heart of that mission, gazing at the fallen orc. As the towering creature pulled itself up from the ground, it roared in fury, swatting away debris from Karna's earlier attack. The orc sneered, introducing himself with a deep, rumbling voice. "I am Bello, the demon general under the mighty Demon Lord of Greed." His muscles rippled as he raised his spiked metal club, the enormous weapon glowing with latent power. "I will crush you just as I've crushed every fool who's dared step into my domain." Karna took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. Bello was a formidable opponent. His size and raw strength were unlike anything Karna had faced before. Slowly, he raised his hand, activating his mark. He couldn't afford to hold back against someone of Bello's caliber. "Vol!" he called out telepathically, summoning the power of one of his contracted gods, the incarnation of flames, Vol. A ball of intense fire swirled into existence next to Karna, crackling with fierce energy. Vol, in his spirit form, hovered beside him, glowing with an almost playful heat. "This is going to be fun," the old god teased, his form burning brighter as he prepared for battle. As Bello charged, raising his club to strike, Karna infused his body with Vol's fiery power, feeling the heat surge through him. The orc's massive weapon swung down with devastating force, but Karna's hand, now blazing with the fire of the gods, caught the club mid-swing. The ground shook with the impact, but Karna held firm, his strength bolstered by Vol's power. With a sneer of his own, he swiped the club away as if it were weightless. Bello's eyes widened in shock. He had never been bested in raw strength before. This boy, masked and mysterious, was no ordinary opponent. But the orc general wasn't done yet. With a growl, he infused his club with the power of earth, the weapon crackling with jagged rocks and molten earth. "You're just a kid. If I take this seriously, you won't survive," he roared, charging once again. Karna, however, was ready. "Vol, let's end this," he murmured, drawing on even more of the old god's flames. The fire intensified, swirling around his body like a fiery storm. Together they unleashed Kagutsuchi's flame, a devastating wave of scorching heat that roared forward, consuming everything in its path. Bello, caught in the inferno, let out a guttural scream as the flames devoured him. His skin blistered, his muscles charred, and within seconds the demon general was reduced to ash, his once mighty form completely eradicated by the god's fire. As the flames died down, Karna surveyed the scene, expecting some trick. There was no way he could have taken down a demon general so easily, right? Vol, is he really gone? He muttered, chuckled, his voice echoing in Karna's mind. "Kid, we blasted him so hard. There's not even a trace left. You've got nothing to worry about." Still uncertain, Karna summoned a ghost search to comb the area, looking for any sign of Bello. Meanwhile, the injured knight, frozen in fear, watched from the shadows. To her, the orc had been a terrifying menace, but this masked figure, this demon who casually commanded the power of the gods, was on another level entirely. In her eyes, this black-clad figure was worse than the orc ever was. Realizing she was likely next on his list, the knight's instincts kicked in. She scrambled to her feet and, despite her injuries, ran as fast as her broken body would allow, desperate to escape. Her only thought was to notify the kingdom's hero. In her mind, this could only mean one thing. A new demon lord had arrived. A force more terrifying than the orc general she had barely escaped. As Karna finished his search, he sighed and lowered his head. "Looks like Bello really slipped away," he muttered, tugging off the dragon mask that had been pressing into his face. The cool air felt like a reward. easing the weight off his shoulders. When he glanced around, he spotted Cecilia standing nearby, arms crossed, watching the entire fight unfold with quiet intensity. Cecilia finally emerged from the shadows, her eyes gleaming with a mix of pride and curiosity. "Well done, Karna," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Taking over Oni's cavern with such power, you've done a splendid job." But despite the praise, Karna's face fell. He wasn't feeling victorious. "I still think that demon general got away," he muttered, guilt gnawing at him. "If I'd been more careful, he wouldn't have escaped." Cecilia, playing along, gave him a sympathetic look. "You're right, letting the enemy escape was a little careless." She teased lightly, knowing full well that Bello had been incinerated completely by the forbidden spell Karna had unleashed. While Karna stewed in frustration over what he deemed a failure, Cecilia couldn't contain her excitement about what she had just witnessed. A spark danced in her eyes as she recalled it. "Hinokaguchi," she murmured, still enraptured. The flame of Kugutsuchi, a forbidden incantation from the ancient god Val, was among the most devastating techniques known to mortals, its very name whispered in the hushed tones of old tomes. Witnessing it unleashed and wielded by someone like Karna made her pulse race with the possibilities of his untapped potential. The thrill sent a grin creeping across her face, barely contained. With a deep breath to steady herself, Cecilia switched gears. "You've done remarkably well, General," she declared, her smile radiant as she tossed a shimmering purple gem into Karna's hands. Karna frowned, his brow furrowing as he examined the jewel. "What's this for?" he asked, darting glances between the gem and Cecilia, who wore an enigmatic smile. "This is the dungeon core," she explained, her voice tinged with enthusiasm. "It's the heart of your new domain. With this, you can shape the entire dungeon to your liking, transform it into a fortress, a labyrinth, whatever you desire. From this moment on, Oni's cavern officially belongs to you. Make it worthy of a demon general under my command." Karna's mood soared, his previous worries about his role as a demon general dissipating as the thrill of creation surged within him. A grin spread across his face. "I get to build my own dungeon?" His excitement was contagious, prompting a soft laugh from Cecilia, who watched him revel in his newfound responsibility. "Yes, General, you can craft whatever your heart desires," she replied, bemused as Karna held the gem aloft, already brainstorming ideas. Outside, the aftermath of his fiery attack had left a massive charred crater where the entrance once stood, but he brushed that aside, too engrossed in his creative vision. With a determined inhale, he lifted the dungeon core and focused on his first creation. The ground trembled as if alive, gravestones erupting from the earth to form a small eerie graveyard. Karna beamed at it, pride swelling in his chest. "There, my first structure," he declared, satisfaction lacing his tone. Cecilia's eyebrow arched, her amusement evident as she surveyed the scene. "A graveyard?" she asked, a playful smirk playing on her lips. "Why so ominous?" Karna's smile widened, unabashedly proud. "It's necromancy magic, after all. This is my specialty." Though a touch perplexed, Cecilia admired his enthusiasm. She followed him as he eagerly opened the door to his new abode, inviting her inside. To her surprise, the interior was cozy. It wasn't extravagant, but it exuded a charm that even the demon lord of lust found endearing. Karna's favorite feature was the oversized monster-shaped cushion in the center of the room. Without hesitation, he flopped down on it, a picture of contentment. Cecilia smiled, her playful glimmer returning. "Quite the snug little space you've crafted," she observed. "Yeah, not too shabby for a first attempt," Karna replied, his pride palpable. Cecilia's expression shifted to one of seriousness, yet her smile lingered. "Mind if I borrow the dungeon core for a moment?" she asked sweetly. Karna handed it over without a second thought. "Sure. What for?" With a mischievous gleam in her eye, Cecilia held the gem and infused it with her magic. "Well," she began, her tone teasing, "if you were to vanish, I'd be left without anyone to take care of me, and that simply won't do." With elegant gestures, she summoned a shimmering portal in the middle of the room. Karna blinked, confusion flooding his features. "What's that?" he asked, alarmed as he sat up. Cecilia winked at him, her tone flirtatious. "It's a direct line to my room, of course," she replied smoothly. "Now you'll always be just a portal away, in case I need anything." Her words lingered in the air, charged with an unmistakable seductive energy. Karna's face flushed bright red. "Wait, I can't just pop into your room whenever I want." Cecilia sauntered over, placing a finger gently on his lips, silencing him instantly. "Of course you can," she purred. "I trust you after all." Karna's heart raced, his thoughts a chaotic jumble as he struggled to grasp the implications of this sudden intimacy, the unexpected promotion, her playful teasing, and the portal to her room. It was overwhelming, yet Cecilia wasn't finished toying with him. "What's the matter?" she whispered, leaning in closer, her breath teasingly warm. "Were you planning to use the portal for something else?" Karna sputtered, desperately searching for a coherent response, but the words were trapped in his throat. No, I wouldn't." Cecilia laughed, delighting in his flustered state. "Relax, General. It's only for convenience. Unless, of course, you have other ideas." Her tone dripped with playful mischief, leaving Karna to bury his face in his hands, wishing for the ground to swallow him whole. He could never grow accustomed to Cecilia's relentless teasing. But enough about flirtatious demons. Far from the dungeon, back at the royal capital, the surviving knight, who had narrowly escaped from Oni's cavern, finally delivered her report. The authorities, hearing of a mysterious new demon, who had effortlessly vanquished a demon general with a single strike of flame, were thrown into a frenzy. Urgency permeated the air as they issued a new subjugation quest, plastering wanted posters of the unknown enemy all over the city. Only one man was believed capable of handling this formidable new threat, the man who epitomized human strength. As the report landed on his desk, that very man, a smug smile adorning his face, leaned back in his chair, already savoring the thought of a new challenge. This was none other than the narcissistic hero and his insufferable party members, the Battle Master and the Holy Knight. The very same crew Karna had been unceremoniously booted from. "This sounds like a delightful warm-up before we confront the Demon King," the hero quipped, raking a hand through his flawless hair. The man seeking their help nearly swooned with excitement at the thought of the legendary hero accepting such a perilous mission. Naturally, the hero wouldn't agree to anything unless the reward was sufficiently generous. Before they could finalize their plans, however, a voice broke through the chatter. A woman, their fourth party member, stood at the room's corner, her brow furrowed with concern. "Hold on, before we dive into this, don't you think engaging an unknown enemy could be too risky?" Her tone radiated caution as she urged them to think twice. The hero waved her off with a dismissive laugh. "Oh, come on, there's nothing to worry about. Thanks to that convenient stepping stone, Karna Necromos, our holy knight here has mastered resurrection magic. We'll have stable support no matter what happens." The others in the room laughed, their confidence bubbling over as they believed that whatever enemy they faced would merely be another trophy to claim. Little did they know, they were about to encounter a very different Karna, one far more powerful and disinterested in assisting the so-called hero any longer. The hero had been awaiting this opportunity for far too long, his moment to shine and showcase his superiority. He grinned as the mission unfolded before him, already envisioning himself standing triumphantly over the fallen form of a powerful demon. His ears barely registered Aisha, the quiet girl in light armor, expressing concern about the unknown adversary. To him, her worries were merely remnants of when he had ousted the necromancer she had personally endorsed for their party. Hyun, the narcissistic hero, was indifferent. This was his time, and nothing could possibly go awry. Meanwhile, back in his self-fashioned graveyard, Karna sat quietly, awaiting Lady Cecilia's arrival through the portal she had conjured in his room. She had promised they would have breakfast together, but she was running late. A flicker of disappointment washed over Karna as he pondered if she might bail on him. Rationalized, his voice echoing in Karna's mind. "Maybe she's still asleep. You know how the Demon Lord can be," chuckled, suggesting they rouse her. Karna hesitated. It felt wrong to intrude uninvited, but wasn't it part of his duty? Gathering his courage, he stepped through the portal and into Cecilia's room. Upon entering, wearing his dragon mask, he was greeted by the sight of the Demon Lord of Lust herself, fast asleep, clad in nothing but sheer see-through lingerie. Oh no, Karna froze, his heart racing. He hadn't anticipated this scenario at all. Her room was immaculate, a stark contrast to his chaotic lair, and there she lay, radiating power yet resembling a vulnerable, sleepy woman more than a fearsome demon leader. Cecilia slowly blinked awake, her eyes adjusting to the figure looming over her bed. "Oh," she murmured, a soft smile creeping across her face. "You're here." She stretched languidly, the motion mesmerizing, but Karna's mind reeled at the sight of her bare skin, quickly turned away, a blush igniting on his cheeks. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice still thick with sleep. The question lingered between. Karna, red-faced and flustered, stumbled over his words, mumbling something about needing to get to breakfast. It took some playful coaxing, but eventually, he managed to convince Cecilia to get out of bed. With a grin that promised mischief, she slipped into a robe, her hair tousled in a way that made Karna's heart race even faster. She sauntered toward the dining hall, leaving him to trail behind, struggling to steady the rhythm of his pulse. When they reached the hall, Karna was greeted by a sight straight out of a dream. As an apology for her lateness, Cecilia had arranged a breakfast that could rival a banquet fit for kings. The long table was a masterpiece, steaming platters of sizzling meats, vibrant fruits glimmering like jewels, and baskets of bread still warm from the oven, their yeasty aroma wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. "This," Cecilia said with a sly smile, gesturing to the feast, "is a special human meal, just for you. The castle's head chef made sure it's perfect." Karna hesitated, feeling unworthy of such extravagance. But as soon as he took his first bite, all hesitation melted away. Every flavor exploded across his tongue, warm and rich, filling him with a satisfaction so profound it chased away every lingering anxiety. It wasn't just good, it was otherworldly. He had never tasted anything like it. Each bite felt like a reward, making his entire body relax in ways he hadn't realized he needed. But just as Karna began to lose himself in the sheer pleasure of the meal, something across the table yanked his attention back into sharp focus. Cecilia's plate was alarming. In stark contrast to his lavish spread, her dish was an unsettling mass of black sludge, thick, ominous, and dripping with an eerie sheen that hinted at things best left unknown. It looked less like food and more like some ancient curse, the kind you only hear about in whispered legends. The very sight of it seemed to thrum with a quiet malevolence. And yet, Cecilia dug into it with casual delight, happily scooping up spoonful of the strange, writhing substance, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Karna stared, utterly dumbfounded. He wanted to look away, but it was like watching a storm on the horizon. Dark, dangerous, but impossible to ignore. Finally, curiosity overwhelmed him, and before he could stop himself, the words tumbled from his lips. "What is that?" Cecilia chuckled, her laugh light and teasing, as if his bewilderment were the most entertaining thing she'd seen all day. "This," she said, glancing at her plate. "Oh, it's demon food. Not much to look at, huh?" She poked the gelatinous blob with her spoon, and it wobbled ominously. "We demons don't fuss over presentation. It's all about the energy. It's packed with mana. Looks gross, sure, but it's the best way to recharge." Karna's gaze flickered between her plate and his own. The lavish human meal on his side suddenly felt both comforting and foreign, like a reminder that he didn't fully belong in this strange new world. Meanwhile, Cecilia kept eating, blissfully unconcerned, her radiant smile unfazed by the nightmarish blob she cheerfully consumed. For a moment, Karna found himself lost in thought, caught between fascination and unease. Here he was, sharing a meal with a demon, part of a world that defied every rule he knew. And yet, as strange as it all seemed, there was something oddly comforting about it. Maybe, he thought, it's not just about the food after all. Of the bitter sting of being cast out from the hero's party, he could still hear their mocking laughter, the disdain for his necromancy, the repulsion toward his disgusting techniques. He didn't want to make Cecilia feel that same sense of rejection. With a determined glint in his eyes, he asked, "Can I try some?" Cecilia blinked, caught off guard by his earnestness, before a warm smile broke across her face. "You really want to?" It's not exactly the most palatable thing for humans. Before Noans or V could voice their concerns, Cecilia expertly scooped a spoonful of the black goo, bringing it to Karna's mouth. He hesitated, a whirlwind of excitement and dread swirling within him, but he leaned forward, taking the plunge. The moment the food hit his tongue, he was taken aback. It wasn't just tolerable, it was delicious. The flavors danced on his palate, a deep, rich concoction bursting with unfamiliar spices, sending a comforting warmth coursing through him. He chewed thoughtfully, savoring the experience, and his eyes widened in delight as he swallowed. This is really good," he exclaimed, and Cecilia's heart soared at his enthusiasm, a smile lighting up her face. Even Noans raised an eyebrow, mumbling something about how demon food had been revolting in his day. Cecilia chuckled, her laughter a melodic contrast to the thick atmosphere. Demon cuisine has come a long way. It may look terrifying, but it's all about the taste. With a glimmer of newfound courage, Karna asked for another serving, and Cecilia's smile grew even wider, her heart warming at the sight of him enjoying something she cherished so much. "It's true," Karna said between bites. "Sometimes the scariest things can be surprisingly good if you just give them a chance." Hearing those words stirred something profound within Cecilia. She had walked the earth for centuries, but this young man, her employee and ally, was different. His willingness to embrace both the beauty and darkness of her world resonated deeply with her, forging an unexpected connection. After their hearty breakfast, it was time to focus on their mission. Dungeon building loomed ahead, and Karna was practically buzzing with excitement, ready to plunge into the process of expanding his new domain. But before they dove in, Cecilia wanted to ensure he understood the full scope of what being a dungeon master entailed. "Dungeons might appear to be terrifying death traps," she began, her tone serious yet encouraging, "but they serve a vital purpose. They're essential sources of mana for demons." Adventurers who enter the dungeon expend their mana in battle, and that energy is absorbed by the dungeon core, transforming it into something we can consume. This mana sustains powerful demons, and each dungeon plays a crucial role in maintaining balance in the demon world. Dungeons are birthed from the mana of the land itself. As Lady Cecilia explained, the very presence of a dungeon transforms the earth's mana into a form usable by demons. However, should the dungeon's core be destroyed, that mana would return to the land, potentially making it fertile for humans once more. It was an intriguing balance. Dungeons attracted adventurers seeking riches, yet their existence posed a threat to human settlements. Oni's Cavern, positioned precariously at the border of human and demon territories, was particularly contentious. Its location meant that human attacks were frequent, making its defense an ongoing challenge. Hearing this, Karna forged a resolute determination. He would improve the lives of everyone, demon and human alike, using his power for something greater. Letting his ghosts loose in the new domain, he commanded them to begin preparations, fortifying and enhancing the defenses. While Oni's Cavern buzzed with activity, far away in a typical fantasy wilderness, monsters lurked. Unaware of their impending doom, the hero, with all his self-importance, tore through wave after wave of low-level creatures, his holy light slicing through them like butter. Not a drop of sweat graced his brow. Each kill was a glorious one-hit wonder, and the grin on his face only widened as he envisioned himself drawing closer to the dungeon. However, his party wasn't faring as well. The Battlemaster was hurling insults at the Holy Knight, berating her for getting injured by weaklings. She shot back, accusing him of failing to protect her as the shield of the hero. The Holy Knight, proud and indignant, refused to take the criticism quietly, snapping that it was the Battlemaster's own carelessness that had put her in harm's way. Aisha, the group's assassin, could no longer stand by. Stepping out of the shadows, she intervened, her voice edged with irritation. Save your energy for the real fight ahead. What will you do if a powerful demon hears your bickering? Aisha wasn't here to babysit, nor did she want to endure this dysfunctional team for long. She had joined solely for the high pay, yet her attempts to rally them met with more bickering. The Battlemaster, smug and self-satisfied, turned his ire toward Aisha, blaming her for recommending the useless necromancer they had kicked out of the party. Aisha's eyes narrowed, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. That useless necromancer had a golden seal, an undeniable mark of talent. Karna could have been an invaluable asset, but the hero and his team were too blinded by their egos. The Holy Knight chimed in, her disdain for Karna's undead summons palpable. To her, necromancy was a vile art, and the undead were a direct affront to her holy magic. The two women continued to hurl accusations at Aisha, their voices escalating with each passing moment. Finally, the hero interjected, his voice dripping with smug confidence. Yes, Karna was capable, he conceded, but how could a hero shine if he left everything to a necromancer? His self-serving logic was evident to everyone, especially Aisha, who was all too familiar with his narcissistic reasoning. Once again, the problem was swept under the rug, and the party pressed onward toward the dungeon, Aisha simmering in silence. She could feel the foolishness of the hero's words resonating around her. To her, the so-called savior of humanity was merely a self-absorbed brat, choosing his party members based on looks rather than skill. It was no wonder the group was a disaster. As they descended toward the dungeon, a rocky, foreboding structure that seemed to emanate darkness, Aisha suddenly felt an overwhelming pressure in the air, a suffocating weight that made her heart race. For a moment, she couldn't even lift her foot to take another step. This sinister aura, a divinely malevolent energy, oozed from the dungeon's entrance. Even the hero faltered, reconsidering his usually confident stride. Recalling what she knew about this dungeon, Aisha's unease grew. This was supposed to be an ogre's fortress, she murmured, glancing around at the eerie gravestones strewn across the dungeon's exterior. But this looks more like a graveyard. She urged them to reconsider their strategy and retreat, but it was too late. The hero's party was already halfway down the stairs, their confidence unshaken by the ominous atmosphere. Aisha grimaced, knowing that rushing in like this would only lead to disaster, but her words fell on deaf ears. Inside the dungeon, Karna was already aware of their arrival. His spirits, constantly patrolling the grounds, recognized the intruders as they crossed the threshold. Their ethereal whispers relayed the news to Karna's mind, just as Cecilia stood beside him. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over him as he realized who the intruders were. The hero's party, the very group that had discarded him without a second thought. Cecilia and Noan stiffened at the news. Their first challengers weren't just random adventurers, but humanity's elite heroes. Clutching the dungeon core tightly to his chest, Karna felt a swirl of emotions. He knew these people. He had fought alongside them, but now they were enemies. Vowing to hold nothing back, Karna activated the magic within the dungeon core and issued his command. The gravekeepers rose from their slumber, ready to fortify the dungeon's defenses. The tombstones shuddered as undead soldiers emerged, moving with a singular purpose: to protect the dungeon and follow Karna's will. As the hero's party strutted into the dungeon like they owned the place, boots crunching on bones and heads full of confidence. It was dark, musty, and the floor sounded like it hadn't seen a broom in centuries. But they weren't worried. This was just another day in the life of professional dungeon crawlers. Until the moaning started. From the shadows, figures emerged, shambling, lifeless bodies with the kind of glazed-over eyes that screamed, "I've been dead for way too long." Zombies. No armor, no weapons, just ragged clothes, and an expression that said they'd seen better days. About 100 years ago, one zombie tripped over its own feet, smacking into another like the world's worst mosh pit. The Holy Knight grimaced, her nose wrinkling in pure disgust. "Necromancy," she spat, like the word itself was cursed. Who would stoop to this? The Battlemaster squinted at the clumsy horde and cracked his knuckles. Whoever's behind this is about to regret every life decision they've ever made. The hero, on the other hand, was dead quiet, staring wide-eyed at the stumbling zombies like he just found out his Uber Eats order was a month-old salad. His sword hung by his side, limp, as if he was still trying to process what was happening. High above, in the shadows, Karna was having the time of his life. His zombies were about as coordinated as a group of sleepwalkers, but that only made it funnier. One zombie's arm fell off mid-shuffle and sailed through the air, smacking the hero right in the face. Karna had to bite his lip to keep from bursting out laughing. Next to him, Cecilia gave an approving nod, arms crossed. "Nice job, General. This eternal coffin trap is everything." Karna shrugged, looking way too casual for someone who had just unleashed a small army of undead. Just some old dungeon magic. They don't even know I'm the one pulling the strings." Cecilia chuckled, glancing down at the chaos. "Look at them. They're falling apart, and they're still in the foyer." Down below, the hero finally snapped out of it, and in a moment of, "I'm definitely the main character," charged forward. "Stand back. I've got this," he yelled, swinging his sword like he was auditioning for an action movie. For a second, it looked like he might actually handle things, until the temperature dropped, and a ghostly figure floated out of the wall. Karna's smirking ghost projection hovered above the zombies, watching like a reality show host. The Holy Knight's eyes lit up. Finally, something worthy of her skills. "Leave this to me," she declared, channeling divine energy into her sword, preparing to unleash her turn undead spell. A radiant burst of light shot toward Karna's ghost. And then, nothing. Karna's ghost blinked, completely unfazed. Watching this, Karna slow clapped, each clap dripping with sarcasm. "Wow, 10/10's effort, A+. The Holy Knight's face fell. That should have worked." The Battlemaster gave her a side-eye. Yeah. About that." The hero, still frozen, his face blank as if his brain was buffering, unable to process the fact that things were spiraling fast. Up in the shadows, Karna nearly doubled over with laughter. "These are supposed to be the heroes? They're throwing spells at me like I'm a bad Wi-Fi signal." Cecilia grinned, shaking her head. "Heroes, they think they can just hack and pray their way out of anything." Suddenly, Aisha stepped from the shadows, her face calm, her movements precise. She drenched Karna's ghost in holy water and with a flick of her silver dagger, sliced right through his projection. Karna's ghost flickered and dissolved, disappearing into nothing. The Battlemaster glanced at Aisha, raising an eyebrow. "What took you so long?" Aisha smirked, not missing a beat. "Just giving you time to figure out which end of your axe actually works." Karna leaned back, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "She's good," he muttered, "but it's a shame she stuck with those two." Cecilia glanced down at the party, amusement still in her eyes. "Think they'll figure out it's you before they become zombie chow?" Karna chuckled, dark delight dancing in his eyes. "Not a chance, but when they do, I'll make sure they never see it coming."